Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really wrestling with a huge question. It feels foundational to our age, really.
hmm
It's this, did the internet, which, promised us everything, connection, democracy, knowledge, did it actually become structurally warped?
It's a huge question. We're looking at why so many of us feel, well, alienated,
Mhm.
confused, why there's so much uncertainty about what's even true anymore.
Yeah, this is a deep dive into, I guess, structural failure.
Mhm.
And the sources we've got today are, they're pretty forensic in their critique.
They really are. We've pulled from Christian Fuchs' academic work on the digital public sphere, a really profound warning about AI and the crisis of knowledge from the Journal of Future Studies.
And we also have insights on digital activism, the good and the bad, and a really devastating look at the failure of the open access movement in science.
And our mission today is, I think, pretty straightforward. We want to stop talking about misinformation as if it's just a user problem.
Right. It's not about people being dumb.
Exactly. It's about seeing it as a structural failure. We want to unpack how, commercial colonization and these monetization models have just completely distorted our shared reality.
And then, and this is the crucial part, explore some of the radical alternatives that could maybe actually fix it.
So to do that, I think we have to start at the beginning with the idea of what the public space was supposed to be in the first place.
Yeah, let's go back to the ideal of the public sphere before it was, colonized and had a giant price tag slapped on it.
The historical ideal, and Habermas is the key thinker here, is that the public sphere is a space and resources that are open to all, period,
For the common good.
for the common good. Its whole purpose is to organize what he called critical publicity, which is just a fancy way of saying rigorous, open, critical public debate. It's supposed to be autonomous.
Free from capital and the state. It's where you're a citizen, not a consumer.
But Christian Fuchs argues that what we have today is, well, it's the exact opposite of autonomous. It's been, in his words, colonized and feudalized.
And he breaks down that colonization into three types of digital alienation.
Right. And these three really explain that feeling of being hyperconnected, but also somehow totally powerless. So first you have economic alienation.
Yeah.
This is where the logic of capital, just the logic of money, gets into every single aspect of your online life. Everything is a commodity.
You are the product. Your attention is what's being sold.
Precisely. And that economic alienation then allows for the second form, which is political alienation.
So that's when, corporate interests start to dominate over what the public actually wants.
Exactly. Think of surveillance capitalism.
Hmm?
Platforms are just extracting your data for their own private gain, and that whole process prevents any real collective public will from even forming.
Which leads to the third one, cultural alienation. This one feels insidious.
It really is. It's where the platform's own narrow, profit-driven interests, like, pushing sensational, polarizing content because it gets clicks,
Hmm.
is presented as just normal.
It's just how the world works now.
Yeah, this accelerated, fragmented, clickbait way of talking is just the unavoidable nature of modern life. It's not. It's a choice they made.
And when you map those three alienations onto the internet we actually use, you get the big problems Fuchs lays out.
Yeah, he lists 10, but we can just hit the big ones,
Yeah.
the ones you feel every day. The first is just the raw power imbalance from digital class relations.
Yeah.
These aren't just businesses, they're monopolies.
And get the rules for the whole space.
Then there's digital surveillance, this cozy relationship between state and capital. It's not just about ads. It's the constant monitoring that just erodes that feeling of freedom you need to have a real debate.
And central to all of this is, of course, algorithmic politics. The algorithms create what we all call filter bubbles now.
Right? These fragmented publics where opinions are all the same, where you never encounter real disagreement because nuance doesn't generate engagement.
And then there's the one that just exhausts me. Digital acceleration.
Oh, yeah.
The sheer speed of it all, it just strains your capacity to pay attention, leaves no time for actual thought. We're all just reacting all the time.
It's the perfect environment for fake news and post-truth politics to thrive because rational examination of facts is too slow. Emotional outrage is much, much faster.
And to put a number on the sheer scale of power we're talking about, this data point from 2020 is just staggering.
It's unbelievable.
The turnover of the six biggest internet corporations, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Alibaba, and Facebook, was about $857 billion.
Which is Almost exactly the same as the combined GDP of the 22 least developed countries in the world.
So you've got a handful of private companies with the economic power of 22 nations. The idea that our public sphere is autonomous from capital is, I mean, it's a fantasy at this point.
It is, which sets up the next critical point perfectly.
Mhm.
What happens to knowledge itself, to the actual content when the pipes are controlled by that much power?
Yeah, the sources are clear on this. The explosion of information hasn't led to more certainty. It's led to a real, genuine crisis of knowledge.
Absolutely. We are drowning in big data. But the
Yeah.
problem is that data is often uh, unstructured, it's incomplete, or it's just plain noisy.
And there's a statistic in the source material that it just floored me. They estimate that the number of missing links between data points in these huge data sets is around 85%.
85%.
Think about that. You're trying to build something, but your blueprint is 85% blank, and that is what we're feeding our AIs.
And that gets to the core of what they call contaminated information. It's data that hasn't been contrasted or checked, and it actively corrupts the knowledge base.
But an AI runs on it.
AI runs on it. And the sources make a crucial distinction. AI is impersonal. It can't apply personal criteria, which is something that's linked to, wisdom. AI can process, but it can't discern.
So all this contamination changes how we decide what's true. Legitimacy shifts away from, say, an expert with years of experience.
And it moves toward majority rule or the trendiness of a statement. It becomes a quantitative game. If it's viral, it must be true.
So the old pyramid data to information to knowledge to wisdom, that's collapsing. So what comes next? The sources lay out three possible futures, three tomorrows.
The first tomorrow is basically what we just described. Trendy knowledge. This is the future where virality completely trumps rigor. Whatever theory gets the most clicks becomes the dominant bully, just because the algorithm liked it.
Okay, so what's the second one?
The second tomorrow is trust in AI. The world just becomes too complex, too overwhelming, so society basically puts a blind trust in AI to solve our problems.
Which is dangerous because we know the AI is working with that contaminated 85% missing data.
Exactly. We basically lose our human agency. We delegate our critical thinking to the machine, and the wisdom step is just replaced by trust, a leap of faith.
Which leaves the third tomorrow, the most radical one. They call it the unthought future.
Yeah, this one says, forget the old hierarchy, just tear it down. Instead, we have multiple non-hierarchical paths to knowledge that are chosen by humans.
So it's like a multiple choice future.
Kind of. Humans get their agency back by choosing which knowledge path they need for what purpose. It's a total rejection of both the platform's control and the automation of truth.
And that desire for agency, for collective choice, that's the whole promise of digital activism, isn't it?
It is. It's the engine. And it's undeniable that social media has been transformative for collective action. It lowers the barrier to entry. It allows for incredible mobilization.
And we have the receipts, right? I mean, the Arab Spring, the hashtag Black Lives Matter was used over 30 million times in just a few years.
And hashtag #MeToo, over 19 million uses in its first year alone. Engagement with these movements online is huge.
And beyond just getting people on the streets, the platforms provide these safe spaces for support and solidarity. They let marginalized voices speak directly to the world, bypassing the old gatekeepers.
It's what they call networked individuality. It can be incredibly powerful.
Okay, but hold on. If these movements can generate 30 million tweets, if they can fundamentally change the global conversation, how can we say the system is failing activists? I mean, doesn't that prove it's working?
That's the million-dollar question. And the sources would argue that virality is not the same thing as sustainable change. The dualities here are really stark.
Okay, so you get mobilization, but
you also get severe structural limits.
okay.
First, you have the problem of slacktivism.
The low effort clicking and sharing.
Precisely. It feels good. It makes you feel like you've done something, but it can actually replace the harder, sustained offline work that's needed for real change. Activism becomes a trend.
And then there's the contamination problem again. Misinformation.
A huge concern. One study showed 56% of people were worried about inaccurate information spreading around these movements on social media.
And of course, the algorithms are still in charge. They're still biased towards sensationalism.
Right. They amplify the most extreme voices because that gets engagement and it pushes all the nuanced, moderate discussion to the side, which makes building coalitions really, really hard.
And we just can't ignore the personal cost. Online harassment, especially for women and marginalized groups.
It's a huge risk. The data is clear. 41% of women who experienced it said they felt less safe expressing their opinions afterward. So the very platform meant to give you a voice ends up silencing you through abuse.
The vehicle for mobilization is also the thing that limits it.
That's the core structural flaw.
Okay, let's pivot to a parallel that I think is so revealing. It shows how even well-intentioned movements can be co-opted by bureaucracy and commercial interests. We're talking about the failure of the open access movement in academic publishing.
Yeah, Richard Pointer, who's been watching this space for years, makes a really strong case that the open access, or OA, movement has basically failed. And now it's being rebranded to hide that failure.
So OA was supposed to solve three big problems: accessibility, affordability, and equity. Where did it all go wrong?
It failed, and failed badly, on affordability and equity. The initial idea was beautiful. It was this voluntary bottom-up thing where researchers would just self-archive their work. They called it Green OA.
But researchers are busy. They didn't really do it.
They didn't. So the movement's advocates shifted strategy. They went top-down, pushing for mandates from funders and universities. And the second they did that, the big publishers saw their chance.
This is where Gold OA comes in.
This is where Gold OA comes in. The pay-to-publish model. Instead of subscribers paying, now the researcher or their university pays the publisher a big fee up front, an article processing charge, or APC.
So it didn't get rid of the cost, it just shifted who pays.
It shifted it, and in many cases, it made the affordability problem worse and created this massive equity problem.
How so?
Well, if you're an unfunded researcher or a scholar in the Global South, you can't afford these huge APCs. So you're shut out of publishing in top journals. It disenfranchised a whole class of researchers.
And the sources use this really powerful phrase for what this does to researchers: proletarianization. What does that actually mean?
It means their intellectual labor is getting squeezed. They spend more and more time on administrative tasks, filling out compliance forms, managing these complex payments, instead of doing research.
They become like assembly line workers for the publishing industry.
Or losing their autonomy to bureaucracy. And now, on top of all that, there's AI, a huge new threat.
Because the large language models, they need good, clean data to work.
Exactly. Scraping the messy, contaminated web gives you bad results. They need high-quality, vetted scientific literature, which creates this perverse incentive.
The publishers are sitting on the good stuff, the valuable, curated data, so we could see a return to more paywalls, more gatekeeping.
And the funders who mandated these open licenses, letting anyone reuse the research commercially, well, they might be regretting that now.
Because they basically handed over the raw material for the next generation of multi-billion-dollar AI models for free.
The very movement designed to free knowledge could lead to it being locked up more tightly than ever before.
Wow. Okay, so we've painted a pretty bleak picture. A colonized public sphere, contaminated knowledge, co-opted movements. If the whole commercial model is just structurally broken, what's the alternative?
The alternative has to be a complete structural overhaul. Fuchs and others champion what they call a public service internet, run by public service media, totally non-commercial. It's the only way to get immunity from the colonization.
So what would that look like in practice?
Well, imagine a public service YouTube, a nonprofit platform. Its goal is to promote democratic content. And crucially, it would have trained moderators proactively checking for racist content, for hate speech.
So it's not just driven by what gets the most engagement, even if that engagement is toxic.
Exactly. It completely rejects that commercial logic. Or another idea is Club 2.0.
Which sounds like the perfect antidote to digital acceleration.
It's designed to be. It's a slow media approach, a debate format, combining live TV with an online platform. It's open-ended, it's live, but it has constraints.
What kind of constraints?
To fight acceleration, your video comments might be limited to, say, 5 minutes. To fight online hooliganism, you can't be anonymous when you contribute to the discussion.
And the big one.
The big one. It will be built from the ground up for data protection and privacy. No constant surveillance. The absolute opposite of the current commercial internet. It would be an infrastructure for deliberation, not for extraction.
So that really wraps up the core tension we've been exploring. This undeniable potential of the digital world is being structurally undermined at every turn by commercial colonization, and it's threatening everything from activism to science.
It really is. We've seen that the system isn't just a little broken. It's designed to fail the ideals of a public sphere. And just tinkering around the edges isn't going to fix it.
Which brings us back to that idea you mentioned earlier, the most radical one, the unthought future.
Right. That idea of multiple, non-hierarchical paths to knowledge that are chosen by human beings.
Hmm.
And I think that leaves us and you with a final provocative question to think about. If the traditional structures we've relied on for public debate, for validating knowledge, if they are truly collapsing under the weight of this colonization, then maybe true critical thinking, real democratic progress, requires us to do more than just patch up the institutions we have. Maybe it requires us to collectively demand and then build these radical, non-hierarchical public alternatives from the ground up, because that structural choice might be the only real path forward